to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane. Starring Ryan Rash.
You can't make this shit up. The gay, describing his life.
And Dale Hummel.
If it says made in China, return to sender.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel alongside co-star Ryan Rash.
China!
Thank you, Ryan. We will talk about China today. We skipped that last week, but we will talk about that. But before...
And the world has ceased to exist because you did not talk about China.
I think a lot of things went backwards because we didn't talk about China. But before we talk about China, we need to discuss next week. And that is, are we going to be recording in Seattle, Portland, Chicago, or New York City?
I'm not going to any of those places.
I think they look like an enticing place to visit right now.
I'm sure you do.
Are you in favor of these mayors standing up and saying, let's allow these rioters to burn our cities down and destroy everything they can?
Dale, I think that the world is a crazy place right now. And you are now CNN. I'm telling you, you literally make stuff up to just build your cause, I think. Like, I don't understand it.
No, these cities, these mayors are real. They're real and they're crazy. And I'm going to set political preferences aside and try to implement a little bit of common sense. And when they're destroying federal buildings, shooting each other, whatever they're doing in most of these major cities, why is it bad to try to get under control?
Well, because they don't want it under control, because if they have things under control, then there's no news.
And it looks like Trump's going to do better in the election if we're under control.
Duh.
It is a problem.
It's a very large problem. I mean, I really don't think they care if anybody dies anymore. Like, it's just, what did AOC say the other day? Something about, like, if we lose a few million jobs or whatever, get Trump out of office, it's fine. I think that's what that is their new plan on that.
She admitted that.
Yeah. It was in a tweet.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was
very, very impressive. Well, I think like Mayor Lightfoot there in Chicago, she's coming on with press conferences basically saying, well, we're blowing all this out of proportion. And there's people in less than an hour. There was a funeral or a gangster that drove by and they shot up 14 people. And no, we're blowing it out of proportion. It's all fine.
We know Trump loves to tweet. Your Chicago mayor, she likes to tweet too. And she told Trump to keep his forces away.
She did say that, and it sounds like a few of the other mayors went with her to send a letter to our attorney general and a few others, I believe, to keep the federal homeland security out of the cities. They do not need any help. Well, that's obvious.
Clearly they have it under control.
Yeah. I just wonder if that average person that lives in that city where some of this is taking place, irregardless of political affiliation, they cannot agree with that.
Well, if they do, bless their heart. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. There's all kinds of news. We're gonna switch topics here. I could talk about these cities and the riots and the craziness.
China.
It is difficult for me to even wrap my head around it. It's so bizarre that we're allowing some of these things to happen. But before that, and obviously I think we've talked about it in every single episode, we do need to address COVID-19. It's still playing a factor, not only in the stock show industry, obviously across the country and across the world. Ryan has some news for us that doesn't bode well for California. I believe you had mentioned they are number one.
They are the new Miss Rona King. They have surpassed New York today. They have the most cases. California is the new champion. They have over 400,000 new cases active cases of coronavirus, and clocked in over 12,000 yesterday.
That's a big day. And I do question that the accuracy of these tests. You continue to hear that they're testing more than once. I have no idea how accurate any of those numbers are. So I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. I do get concerned about
back to you becoming CNN. You just make it up.
No, I think the numbers are, I'm not saying the numbers are made up, but I am confident that they're not as accurate as they need to be. Can we look at them and get some general references from them? I believe so, but I am not going to hold those as statistically accurate. I could have found out more today. This morning, Ryan returns into Houston Airport. I text him a couple questions saying, hey, you're in Houston, maybe swing by a couple of the hospitals, just visit with the personnel, see if they're truly overflowing. Ryan's concern is no, not doing it. Won't do it. Ryan, that we could have found out the truth.
Dale, I'm going to say again, I don't know any sane human being, and by far, I realize that my sanity is a stretch most days, that would just walk in a hospital and be like, yo, Rona's happening. Y'all got any beds available?
I am sure they would have accommodated you. You could have got the information firsthand. We know what's going on.
Dale, I am around small children multiple times a week. I am not going to go walk into a hospital and be like, what's up, my people?
I can understand not wanting to be exposed. You could have put your mask on, maybe some gloves, stood outside.
You have to wear a mask.
You didn't need to go in. What about people that are coming out? You could have just asked one of them.
Okay. You also tried to send me to the China consulate.
I did, and we will discuss that here momentarily. Some other news, the National Barrel Show had canceled. I worry about some of the other collegiate and 4-H and FFA contests this fall that are still scheduled. We hope that they continue. Replacement shows are still popping up, continuing to find a way. I think it's becoming more difficult because of the numbers that are being reported in different states like California.
Lots of shows in Texas had to cancel this past week.
Yeah, but I think California is on the bubble. Ohio is on the bubble. There's a lot of them that are in trouble on numbers. I don't know why Illinois continues to stay relatively low in numbers. I am just shocked that Chicago hasn't spiked. I'm looking at the numbers in Texas and Oklahoma. Obviously, Ryan, they've bumped up quite a bit there. And if I want to look at it strictly from a stock show world perspective with the majors in Texas and OYE there in Oklahoma, if we're spiking now, like what New York did a couple months ago, the positive side of it is we're going to be back down to low numbers, really low numbers, probably by the 1st to mid-November. And that allows everything in 2021 to come back to almost normal in those states. And we don't have to worry about, are these shows going to happen or not going to happen? So again, I'm not wishing numbers to rise anywhere, but there is some positive. And until we get a vaccine, and that I think is on the very near horizon, these things are going to happen. And it's a natural cycle that we're going to spike. And once we spike, we'll come back down, and we've built up some immunity in the population, and life gets a little bit better.
I'm glad that there was some positive in all that. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but you said there was a positive spin to it.
No, the positive is that we're getting through the worst of it now. And like what we saw on the East Coast, the numbers came down, and it's pretty solid now, and it's holding fairly well. I'm sure we're going to have some spikes here and there, but if we can get the big push out of the way now, that opens us up to go to all the major shows and to OYE and any other county shows that are taking place. So I'm not, I guess I would never wish that peak numbers come to anywhere. I'd wish we could avoid it. And with that said, there's a vaccine that looks incredibly promising. I looked at one of them at the University of Oxford. They've been working on and developing one that not only shows a positive COVID-19 antibody response, but also has strong T cell production. And when we can combine both of these, this is huge.
I am not getting my hopes up for anything until there is a vaccine or a proven therapeutic, because once that happens, then the liability issues go away, because even if these idiots don't take the vaccine or whatever, it's not anybody's fault that they didn't protect themselves.
I agree. And I believe it was you that told me one of the polls said that only 33% of the U.S. population would be willing to take a vaccine.
That is correct.
And I have a hard time with that. If that vaccine's proven and there's no negative response to it, it just seems crazy that we wouldn't jump on board with that. And the one at Oxford that they're working with, when we talk about these killer T cells, they basically search out and destroy these infected cells that are essentially the factories of the virus. And I mean, it's huge when we can have an antibody response, a T cell response. I believe the U.S. ordered 100 million doses from this particular company that's working with Oxford, with 500 million more that they can order into the future. And if the researchers are correct there, if everything goes perfectly well, we can have that FDA approval and released sometime in November. Do I think that's possible? It's probably a long shot, but December's possible. And if everything goes well, it can happen. And right now, everything's gone very smooth. They've injected 30,000 individuals across the world, gathering data, and hopefully sooner than later, we'll have an answer on whether or not that one's going to be approved and released to the public.
Well, you have to know that like all of those pharmaceutical companies are like racing for the cure because they want to make the money. So, I mean, that's what gives me faith is that all of them have got to be busting ass to get the vaccine because they want to make all the money.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a strong motivating factor. I believe that. But let's hope that we continue in our stock show world to find replacement shows and people to continue to find ways to put on shows. I hope that the spikes come back down sooner than later and things come back a little closer to normal. But there's no question it's spreading throughout the rest of the country hot right now. And it's something that we're going to have to deal with.
Among other things like China.
Well, let's talk about China. Would you like to discuss China?
No, but I know you want to. So that's why I just keep going, China.
The first thing that we can talk about on China is the State Department, the U.S. State Department evicted the Chinese diplomats from the Houston consulate, ordered it shut down. Ryan literally drove by there this morning, refused to stop in, refused to take any pictures, see if there's anything happening at the Chinese consulate. Once they announced this, the Chinese diplomats burned documents. Firefighters responded, were not allowed in. Now China's vowing to retaliate because we closed down their consulate and kicking out their diplomats. People are now asking, is this the beginning of the Cold War? Are you kidding me? We've been in a Cold War with China for decades, and we've just chosen not to participate or ignore it. It's crazy to me. I don't get it. What about them exploiting trade agreements, cyber attacks, infiltration of everything that we have in terms of science? Trillions of dollars in intellectual property, taking over the South China Sea, and maybe this thing called a pandemic that they knew about and basically released on the world. But we don't have a problem with China. They're not in a Cold War with us. Well, they have been, and they're kicking the living shit out of us. And finally, we have somebody that's standing up to him in terms of our president, and I hope he's allowed to continue to do that. Ryan, why didn't you not stop by the consulate and just see if they were burning documents or shredding or getting the evidence that we could present?
Do you feel better now, Dale?
No, I have a little more on China if you'd like.
Oh, well, I did not go to the Chinese consulate because I have made it this far in life without getting arrested, and I don't plan on it anytime soon. So if you want someone to go be your spy at the Chinese consulate, I suggest you get on Craigslist and find you one.
Now, and the other thing, we're going to get accused of being a little political, and we do have conservative views, both Ryan and I. But I don't think you can even look at this from a political standpoint. It's simple. Here's what China's done to us. They've positioned themselves by buying U.S. companies, buying land, putting us in a situation in terms of debt, stealing everything they've stolen in terms of intellectual property. They're on the point that I think we need to be concerned about it. And I look around, and I think most of the world's oblivious to it.
I agree with everything that you're saying that China has done to us. And literally, Trump is the first person that not only became president, but ever ran for president and talked about the fact that China has literally been bleeping us for years and years and years. And I get that. And I understand it. And I'm with you. And I believe they deserve to pay. I'm going to say again, I need this man to stay in the White House. And you nor him know a thing about timing.
You think him bringing up China issues now and kicking those diplomats out hurts his campaign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do. Yes. Because the people that were going to vote for Trump, we're going to vote for Trump, whatever. So we got to get a few more, like some independents. And most people do not thrive on chaos like we do, Dale. They like calm, peaceful stuff.
When he did this, I made a choice. I decided I'm going to vote twice. So he did help himself.
You are going to vote twice.
I'm in Illinois. It's allowed.
Okay, like, I'm not trying to interrupt this, but whatever. But, like, I just got an alert that says President Trump and White House officials announces a surge of federal agents on Chicago.
I think that's a good place for him to be.
So there you go. You're gonna need multiple votes in Chicago because Trump is sending people in there to kick their ass right now.
He's going to take care of it. He doesn't have a choice. He has to do that. And in your mind, politically, is that a bad move for him as well or not?
Oh, I don't even know anymore. I just need the man to get reelected, and
If your chaos theory is correct, we don't want to do this. But if you don't do it, it becomes, I don't know what happens to the cities. I really don't know how far it would go.
look, the people that are listening to this do not understand how much I worry about Joe Biden being the president. Like, I truly think I'm gonna have to move, and I don't want to be one of those people like that were all butthurt when Trump won and said, I'm moving and this isn't my country and that's not my president. Because I'm not like that. But Lord, it's scary. It's so scary.
I'm scared for law and order and everything that may crumble when I don't know. It's going to be difficult.
And I just need him to announce who his vice president is so I can figure out who is actually going to be the president for 3.5 years if he wins, because he's only going to make it about 6 months. I mean, anyway.
He sure has delayed on that announcement. I mean, I think he's backed himself into a corner that I think they're nervous about it, or they would have came out earlier.
The one thing that I do want to bring up, and again, this is not, you know that Kanye West had his first political campaign rally. Did you know that?
I did.
Yes. I did not get to watch it. I saw some reviews of it. And then his wife today came out and talked about his struggle with bipolar disorder, because I guess at this rally, he said some stuff that was a little off the wall, whatever. But
he went way out there, way out there.
I do not care if Kanye is bipolar, deaf, blind, whatever. I need him to stay in this election, and I say he would be a better choice for president than Joe Biden. That's all I got to say about it.
And do you think he'll take some of the Republican vote or some of the Democrat vote?
He will take way more votes away from Joe Biden than he will Trump.
I would agree with that.
Way more.
I would.
Way more.
We're in disarray. Los Angeles Teachers Union. Okay, they called off school.
Oh Lord, I thought we were gonna get over this.
No, they called off school last spring, and before they go back to school this fall, which they probably won't, you want to know what they're demanding? Just ask me.
Dale, since you haven't told me this 15 other times, please tell me again. What
they are requiring that California defund the police, specifically Los Angeles, no charter schools, eliminate all those. We don't want any competition, and Medicaid for all. And if you grant them all those things, then they'll go back to teaching.
I mean, that seems completely logical and rational to me. Duh. I mean,
yeah, just seems perfect. Now,
because police forces and healthcare have so much to do with educating the youth of America. I mean, they go hand in hand, right?
They're definitely tying things together, and it's like things I've never dreamed could happen. I had an email yesterday from our local public school, and I was excited when I got done reading it. And this is a school that maybe has 100 students in the high school. It's not very many. Their, I guess, proposal is they have threefold. You can do three things. They said you can homeschool your kids, which they have nothing to do with. You can do that all on your own. They're going to step aside. They can do online instruction, which they'll provide some guidance. They made a point to say, and students can fail rather than what it was like in the spring where they're pretty much going to pass everybody. Or you can be in school 5 days a week in person, wearing a face mask and implementing some form of social distancing. So we're giving you three very logical options. If you want to homeschool, have at it. If you want to do online instruction and that makes you the happiest, or you think that's the best for your given situation, they're good with it. Or come to school. What is so difficult about that? Why don't we just implement that across the board, across the country? Done.
I think that all has some very valid points to it. And I'm going to agree with that. Can I bring up the negative side of this?
Sure.
Do you know how much teachers make?
I know the ones in our district are probably much lower than.
What do you think the average starting salary for a teacher is in the United States of America?
I would say not very much.
$34,000.
I was going to guess 40, but yeah.
$34,000. So this plan that I think that you just talked about that has some very valid points to it. Do you realize that the teachers that don't make enough anyway to put up with all the bullshit that they have to educate our youth of America now have to make multiple strategies and plans for teaching kids because they may be in class, they may be partially in class, maybe online. Don't know. That's the negative I see.
I believe in the schools that are larger than this one, they could probably say, well, this set of teachers is going to prepare for online instruction. This set's going to prepare for in-class instruction. I think it can work. It's easily the best plan and the simplest that I've not. It works. It's simple. You make the choice. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You make the choice.
One of my best friends is a college professor, and I'm not going to say which college it is, but he is literally having to get ready because they haven't made an official decision yet. But what they think they're going to do is they're going to allow those kids that are at that college to either do it all online, go part-time, online part-time, or full-time in class. And that is their biggest concern, is that they will have to prepare 3 totally different teaching experiences for those 3 options.
And I can see that, and I never stopped and thought about it in that manner, but I can see in some situations that being difficult. But I still think it's the best solution. Let's take this $1 trillion that Nancy Pelosi would like to extend, the $600 bonus unemployment per week, things that are preventing people from going back to work because they're making more money not working. Let's give it to the teachers so they can do this and be rewarded for it.
That is a logical way to do it. I just don't understand why we can't either keep your kids at school and homeschool them, or they got to go back to class. I think that's the way it should be. But again, I'm for anything that will get some of them back in class,
or at least allow the opportunity for that family's choice to send their children back to school if they choose. And it's perfect. Each situation is so different. We can't mandate a blanket something for everybody. It's easy. Let that family decide what's going to work best for them, and away you go. I think it's brilliant. It's simple. It's brilliant. All the things that need to happen can happen that way.
Get with it, Dale.
You want to know something I'm fearful of besides China? You could predict this. What happens if somehow Mr. Biden manages to avoid participating in any debates?
Okay, we have argued over this. I'm going to argue this with you again. He has already gone on national TV and agreed to be in 3 debates. If he backs out now, he's going to be the biggest pussy in America, and nobody's going to vote for him.
Oh, I think him being silent gets him more votes, and I think he could pop up and say, I want to set an example for COVID response or something crazy. I promise you his handlers are doing what they can to figure out a way out of those debates.
Well, if they do start that bullshit, I tell you what, I don't know if I'm going to have to go jump the White House fence or whatever to talk to Trump, but I am going to get to Washington and tell him, look, this is what you need to do, because all it takes is Trump, Biden, and 1 cameraman and 1 moderator. That's all the people that's got to be in there. Trump is the most tested coronavirus person. He gets multiple tests a day. So, no. These debates got to go on. And I think Kanye should get to be in them, too, because he's even going to make Biden look senile and stupid and remedial. And, yeah, no, the debates.
No, that would be a nice twist to throw him in. I agree. He should jump in there. Did you watch the
Trump better not let this weasel out of the damn debates. It will be the end of his campaign. I'm telling you right now.
I'm telling you, I don't know that he has a choice.
Oh, yes, he does. I would drive to that man's basement in Delaware and pound on his door until he let me in.
I have no doubt you would do that. None whatsoever. His last press conference, did you see how he exited from that?
Who, Biden?
Yeah.
He had another event to go to. Yeah, it's called Alzheimer's and You or whatever.
Well, his statement was, I look forward to taking your questions in the future, but I have another event to get to. He read off the teleprompter and he left. You don't think his handlers have complete control at this point?
Ugh, I'm not even.
Yeah, we better leave it alone. You know what we should do? We should get to our topic of the day. We may have gone a little long in current events today.
Oh, I cannot handle the Biden of it all. But anyway, next. Okay. What's the topic?
Okay, the topic today is we posted some gear giveaway for Beyond the Ring. We had some hoodies come in and some hats come in, and the first one went over so well on giving away a few hats and talking about favorite episodes. And I was really pleased that there wasn't necessarily a favorite, but all of them seemed fairly popular or at least balanced.
That's because I'm on every one.
I think that is the common denominator, no question.
Hello.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. So the next one we put up a hoodie giveaway, and we had stated in the manner that post whatever you'd like in terms of discussion topics, thinking originally we're going to try to set up for an entire episode. And there are some topics up there that we've already discussed between Ryan and I that we want to make as entire topics for the episode. But
Nancy Pelosi on there? Because that's a whole nother.
She was not on, and I left that alone. I was going to talk about it, but I left it alone. I'm not going to go down that road. I can't. It gets me too worked up. So with this one, we did have a lot of comments, and it was interesting to see what those of you out there want us to discuss and talk about, and we're happy to address some of those. So we're going to take a few of those questions today and get through as many as we can, and some of those actually will be an entire episode as far as material to cover. The first one that we're going to discuss, Sandy posted, what can we do with livestock to get them to bounce back after a show to be ready for the next one? I'm assuming if we're talking about jackpot shows back to back or from one week to another, irregardless of the species, we do see some of these things happening. And Ryan, do you have any guidance for?
I guess if you're talking about like going to multiple shows in a weekend where you do one on Saturday and one on Sunday, again, it kind of goes back to that episode with me, you, and Blaine, and just talking about keeping them hydrated and on feed and stuff like that. So especially in this kind of heat, we will make sure that they have electrolytes in them and keeping them cool and stuff like that's about all that you can really do to keep them as fresh as you can at those shows when you're going to multiple shows in a weekend. Now, if you're talking about you've been at shows over the weekend and you've got them back home, we have shows every weekend and we like to go to them, but I always think that the best thing for them to do is just stay in the same routine. And I know that sounds simple, but just stay in the same routine, because when they have the same routine, come home from show next morning, do what you always do, they're going to be the most calm and the most relaxed because they're used to that. And again, that sounds simple, but that's really something that's worked for us.
And I agree completely. And I think we're indirectly talking about stress and hydration, and those two factors being pretty large. And if we can get them to acclimate to stress, the more shows they go to, the less stressed they are at some of those shows. But we have to get over that hurdle in those first two or three to get them through the show scene, the sounds, the noises, the smells, all of those things. And I couldn't agree with Ryan more about making sure that we keep them hydrated, whether we have to drench them if it's allowed, bring water from home, whatever you need to do to keep that hydration up. I think in general, and again, I'm not speaking about individuals, but in general, if we look past or look back into the past 10 years or even more, sometimes going into a show, depending on what we're trying to make that animal look like, we indirectly pull feed and water probably a little bit harder than we should. And I think it does us maybe a disservice because we're dehydrating them a little bit. We're throwing them off more. So I can remember coming back from shows and visiting with others that after we got back from a show weekend, we get home, and let's use pigs for an example, and we put them back into their pen on full water and in their normal levels of feed. And that next morning, it looks like they exploded and just hydrated back up. That's when we know that we did not get enough fluids in them during those shows or during that event. And I think be conscious of that. So I think everything Ryan's talking about in terms of that routine, let's try to stay as close to it as possible. And trust me, we can keep these animals on water. Even if you think you're a little full or a little bigger bellied, we can keep that water going hard until probably 8 hours before they hit the ring. And all of that's either going to be absorbed in their muscle or excreted out as urine. And that belly is going to be gone, or as much as it would have been without water previously. So I think it's a good one. I think that is something, as we see more jackpot shows pop up, it's something that we deal with.
I know people probably think that when we just say keep them hydrated and keep them overtrained, it sounds simple, but the ultimate goal, whether you're at home or you're at a show, is to keep the animals as stress-free as possible, because everybody, whether you're a human or a show animal is going to look better when they're not stressed. And I'm just telling you, I'm out there every weekend, and some of these temperatures this summer are insane. So you keep them on as hard of water as you can get, and as hot as it is, they're going to be fine when it comes ready to show, because it is going to be absorbed or pissed out, one of the two, as hot as it is.
Yep. Excellent question. We appreciate that one from Sandy. Meredith posted a question that many have asked in a similar format as what Meredith asked. What does a judge look for most in showmanship, and what is a pet peeve in showmanship? Ryan, I'm going to let you start right in on that one.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Joe.
You love showmanship.
You're so kind. I do love showmanship, and because it was very important to me as a kid. It was very important to all the kids that I help. And the problem, and I give this speech every weekend, because almost every show I judge showmanship. The problem with showmanship is it is even more personal than actually judging a stock show, because there is no class in high school or college that teaches one how to judge showmanship. So it is all personal opinion. And what I think is the most important in showmanship, and what Dale thinks is the most important in showmanship, or what a listener at home thinks is most, they can all be very, very different. So all I can tell you is what is the most important to me, and that is eye contact, intensity, your presence in the ring, and body language speaks worlds and volumes. And to me, in terms of showmanship, pet peeves, I have two. I say it every time, everything I show. First and foremost, it does not matter what we are judging, what species, etc. Every judge in America wants to know what's coming in the next class. So they are going to look to the holding ring to see what is coming in the next class. And if you and your animal are not on point, and you are in that judge's eyesight, you have lost your chance to make your first impression. And so that's my biggest pet peeve. The other pet peeve I have, and again, it doesn't matter if it's a stick in front of a steer heifer's face, or it's making a pig walk too fast or slow, or when they try to race the sheep and goats around the arena. Every animal is going to walk at the rate of speed that it is the most comfortable at, depending on how it is structured. And when you either try to hold it up or make it go faster, you are impeding that animal's ability to move at its best. So those are my two pet peeves.
Those are perfect. And I could not agree more with how Ryan summarized some of those. And when Ryan talks about that body language and that intensity and that eye contact, it's about that ring presence of the person. And I just refer to it as that look. And you'll have some of those kids, you'll catch them in the holding ring like Ryan's discussing, and you just know they're going to come in because they've got that look and they're going to nail it. I'm not necessarily talking about male, female, how they personally look, but just their intensity, their body language that Ryan's talking about. It's huge. There's no question. I want to see ring awareness. I want them to be very much in tune with where they're supposed to be, how the ring has worked throughout the day or the previous class. And if they can be in some situations, if you've got somebody ahead of you or that's not moving along, try to be courteous to a certain degree, competitive, but courteous. A pet peeve. I couldn't agree more with where Ryan's are. And I want to add one more to that. And in Ryan's one, he talks about when we try to get these sheep or goats to go too fast or too slow, or a pig or a calf or whatever it is, you have to let them go at their natural pace if you do not want to impede that movement. And I promise you, the judges that want to evaluate structure, they're going to take that in consideration, not just in showmanship. This applies across the board into the show as well. And that's critical. And I probably see that happen too often, and I'm not sure why it happens. Maybe the first one comes in at a fast pace and the others think they have to follow. I'm not sure who sets that pace or that standard, but let's take a step back, think about it, find the pace of that animal where that animal's most comfortable, and go with it. One of my pet peeves, and not just in showmanship, but out in the ring as well, I want that ring to move smoothly and work from class to class as efficiently as we can, and allow who's ever judging, whether it's me or Ryan or somebody else, the best chance to evaluate them correctly and individually. And when we have an individual in that ring that's paying attention to someone on the outside and has no idea what's going on, that's time to walk or time to give a side profile or whatever it may be, we're constantly having to tune them in and direct them where they want to go because they're too concerned about getting coached from outside. Just one of mine. I'm sure Ryan deals with it better, but it is all individual. And I noticed from one part of the country to another, I had visited with Ryan a couple of days ago that many years ago when I first started judging on the West Coast, a lot of these lamb kids would switch from side to side in terms of how they would brace those lambs depending on where I was at. And I think a lot of it is that judges maybe that they have shown under the past and showmanship told them to do that, and or they're walking on both sides rather than staying primarily on the show side as a judge. But when I get into it, I'll actually make a speech after the first class and say, guys, I think we're better off just staying on one side, keeping them in the brace. Let's not switch and take a chance of moving a foot or something going wrong. So there is some differences. And if I can give one last bit of advice, be cautious. I love that the exhibitors listen to each showmanship judge and what they want. But remember Ryan's very first statement. He can tell you what he wants. I can tell you what I want. But guess what? That next person might be a little bit different. So don't take it as gospel that you have to do it exactly like you did, or the example that was set from the last showmanship judge.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I tell people all the time, when you stop learning, you stop living. So always listen and always learn from every single judge. But again, take it all into perspective, and you've got to develop your own style and your own way of doing things. The one tip about showmanship that I think is universal, and I don't think it matters who is sorting, great showmen make it seem effortless. And that is just something that you should all strive for. I promise you that is really what separates a whole bunch of just the great showmen from the good ones, even though they're intense and you know they're in it to win it from the very moment they step into that barn, they still make it look effortless. And that's an important thing. Dale was talking about, moving from side to side on brace and all this other stuff. And I judge lots of lambs and goat shows, and I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to anyway. I don't know what this new trend is, that when you're walking in the class, you prop that thing up and they're ready, and now they want you to signal for you to come in after you've looked at the front end of that sheet. That's irritating to me. Most of these shows, we're trying to get them make them efficient, especially now more than ever, because we've got to get in and out in a timely manner because of COVID-19 and all the restrictions that we have. If I need to see the front of your goat or your sheep, I promise you, I will walk in front of it, and I will ask you to step to the side. So if you're showing to me, do not stop at the entry gate and prop that thing up and wait for me to signal you in. I'm going to look at all angles of that animal before it's over with. And most of the time, I like evaluating animals when they're in motion because you can see the flaws a lot easier than when they are propped up, braced, stuck, etc., because these kids are so good at what they do. So probably shouldn't have gone there, but I went there. Next.
That's okay. They asked for pet peeves, and that's one. And you realize that they're obviously being told to do that. And it's kind of what we talked about.
I don't know who started that trend, but I disagree. So if that person is listening, call me. We'll talk about it.
I'm sure they'll get right to it. The next one that we have in line here, Emma post. What trends do you see in the stock show ring in the next 15 years? And what do you hope will be eliminated?
Take it away, Dale.
I will jump on that one. If we talk about it, and part of it's because of COVID-19, I see more privately run shows, jackpots, backyard shows, whatever you want to refer to them as. The families have more choices. And with more choices, there's going to have to be more focus on the exhibitor, and everything will work better in my mind if we just simply put that out there. Tyler Novell talked about, let's focus on the exhibitor. And I think he's so correct in that last week's episode that if we keep the exhibitor first, we're going to probably we're going to make for a more enjoyable show and everything falls into place. In the past, there may not have been many shows or choices, and we had to accept the good and the bad at the shows that existed. But moving forward, and partially because of COVID-19 causing all these new jackpot shows and backyard shows to pop up, people are realizing they can put on a show, and they can put on a pretty good one sometimes, that are very popular and they get huge numbers. So essentially, I think the exhibitors will vote on what shows they prefer via deciding which shows to attend. The ones that are well attended are going to continue and they're going to thrive. The ones that maybe are not as enjoyable or as exhibitor friendly, and we've had plenty of them, we've all been to them, are probably going to lose some numbers now that there's more choice. Competition is a motivating factor that makes everything and everybody step up their game and focus on the consumer being the exhibitor. And with that said, stock show families have a choice. Competition comes into play, and I think we're going to see even more enjoyable shows moving forward.
I get asked what's the next trends, what's going to happen in 5 years and 15 years and all this stuff all the time. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you, I am not Madam Cleo. I do not have a 1-800 hotline, nor do I have a crystal ball in front of me that can predict the future for you. So I don't know. But I will tell you what I would like to see happen. And to touch on Dale's point, I think for a long time, this industry has not tried to cater to the exhibitors or the families as much as they should. The shows are established, that's what they are, and this is what you get no matter what. I think that in all other industries, the consumer or the customer is normally always right. And we don't follow that as much in the stock show industry. I do think that we have to become more exhibitor friendly. I think that the families and the exhibitors should have more of a say on all levels, not from what awards the shows give, to who's going to be judging the shows, just everything. And I take a lot of heat from a lot of people that judge shows and sort, because when we talk about this, because they say, well, of course you want the kids to vote. You're the most popular guy out there. Well, first off, if I'm the most popular person out there, there's a reason for that. And so I'm proud of that. I'm not going to shy away from it. That should make other people want to be popular as well. Not hate on me because I am popular. And that is not the only reason that I think kids and families that show should get a voice in who they're showing to. That is something that should have happened a long time ago, before I ever stepped into the first ring to sort of show. That is something that should happen. The other thing that I hope happens, and again, a lot of times we hear this, there's too much politics in the show ring, and sometimes it is blown way out of proportion, and people that get beat just want to scream politics. But there is a portion of times at shows where politics does affect the outcome in some way. It may be minor, it may be major, but it does happen. And I would like to see less and less of that as the future continues.
And Ryan, that's the elephant in the room when we want to talk about politics in the show ring. And Ryan and I have discussed.
That's a whole nother episode.
It is. We've discussed this. We're going to tackle that episode, and we're not going to hold back. It's going to be as transparent. There'll be some people that probably don't like it. There'll be others that think it's the best episode.
There's going to be lots of people that don't like it. I promise you, because I hear it all the time.
No, but we are going to address it. And as Ryan stated so well, that sometimes we scream politics because we don't like getting beat, even when we should. But there's no question that it exists, and it's something that needs to be taken head on. Because if there's one thing, in short, and I don't want to go too deep into this because we are going to dedicate an entire episode to it soon, but families are not going to continue to go to these shows if they believe they can take a good one and have no chance of winning that show. It just isn't going to happen. They're going to, if there's one thing that scares me more than COVID-19 in terms of our industry, it's that people are going to get so frustrated with some of the political issues that they're just going to stop. And that's not where we need to be.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
And we will. That episode's coming up soon, I promise. And we will attack it head on. And I hope it goes well. Next one, Morgan Post. What are the differences in shows across the country? Ryan, I think you're the best one to address this. You've been all over in the last couple months.
See, I really don't think there are major differences in shows across the country based upon geographical region. And so I guess even though I should be able to give a real intelligent answer to this, I guess the simple answer is I think basically we're all in it for the same reasons and we're all trying to do the same thing. And like I said, when I go east, west, north, or south, I think that the stock are all we're all on the same playing field of trying to build them better, make them more unique. It's not like I go out east and they're way fatter, or you go west and, they're behind in terms of, bloom and stuff like that. So I don't see a lot of major differences in terms of the stock, in terms of geographical region. Of course, there are going to be states that are more competitive, and the stock is just, there are greater numbers of a higher quality stock because, like in Texas, we have more opportunities. We have 6 major shows. And so, there's going to be factors like that. But I think overall that we're all kind of in the same boat, rowing in the same direction right now.
I agree. And it is difficult to sort that apart. I think we've evolved where at one point, and we have to go back quite a ways, there was probably a little bit of difference in terms of maybe the type of hogs that were used in Texas versus the North and in some of that. But I think we've really come together to a certain degree, and it's very, very much universal, just as Ryan stated there. I think we have some differences in how competitive different areas are, but that could be within the same state as well as from state to state. I think we have different levels of involvement from ag teachers and extension agents. We see the South far more involved in that than we do in the North. So for the most part, I think we're running across maybe local things in a showmanship style or something simple like that. But for the most part, just as Ryan stated so well, that we're all going the same direction for the same purpose, and maybe have a few little twists in there in terms of who's behind the scenes with involvement, or maybe this certain type of showmanship's become popular because a judge came through and stated this is what he or she wanted. But for the most part, we're going the same direction. I don't think you need to really do anything different just because you're going to a different part of the country to show.
The biggest difference in terms of geographical location there is in stock showing, I can tell you one. It is in the sheep world. If you live south of the Red River, they do not believe that blue sheep can win. And it is bullshit. Blue sheep lives matter.
I was not aware of that, but I knew I would say that your fellow Texans are a little bit prejudiced against.
And it is wrong, and it is rude, and I think Trump needs to sign an executive order. Because
needs to jump on that. Now, your fellow Texans are not happy, are a little prejudiced against leg hair and color in some of the goats. They want to keep it a little more traditional than maybe some of us outside of Texas. So there are a few things.
Yeah, well, blue sheep lives matter, and I always say when I sort a sheep show, I'm the only sorter that resides south of the Red River that will admit I'm a sucker for a good blue sheep, and I am.
Okay, next, Lisa asked the question, how do you balance pushing your children to do their best without burning them out? Ryan, you don't have any children, but you've worked with plenty.
I don't have any children, and there's lots of valid reasons on why I don't have any children. That's a whole nother show. But I think the kids that I have helped mentor and just ones that I've seen throughout the country, excuse me, I think that the most important thing that you can do is listen to that child, because children are way more perceptive than what we give them credit for, and they are way more in tune with their wants, needs, and desires than we think they are. And, there are going to be kids like me that you couldn't burn them out if you tried. It was impossible. And there are going to be other kids that you just got to let them gradually get into it. And a lot of people think, well, if I can just get them to win something, then it'll take off and it'll be fine. More times than not, I don't think that has as much to do with it. Of course, if you're successful, that is a better feeling than losing. But I think more than anything else, you got to back off and let that kid figure it out for themselves in a lot of ways. And I mean, every kid needs guidance and mentorship and help. But a lot of times when these kids are out there and you can tell some of them are just not in that moment, it's because they've been pushed too hard. And it is now they have a negative connotation associated with doing this because they have been just hammered this, gotta go. If sometimes we'll just back off and let that child become one with that animal or set of animals that they have in the barn, I've seen it happen way too many times. If you just remove some of the pressure and let them do it and let them figure it out, it'll go a long way.
Ryan, I absolutely love your perspective on that one. And even though you don't have children and you see it so clear, even though I suspect a lot of the kids that you work with have come to you because they are very motivated and they are very competitive and they want to succeed. But you see the whole picture. I'm sitting here with 4 children that are all 4 very, very different. And I think the key, as you alluded to, is the need to discover what that child is passionate about and do our best to foster such. This may not be a stock show, but if it is, like Ryan stated, you're not going to burn them out. However, because we can't pick our children necessarily, we kind of have what we have, you're going to have some of those kids that just because you as a parent are very passionate about stock showing, maybe they're not. And when we push them as hard as we think we need to make them competitive and to try to get all those benefits from them, sometimes it never catches on like we would like it to. So let's take some of Ryan's advice there. Let's listen to those kids and see what they're interested in. And sometimes it's hard to find maybe what they're passionate about, and maybe what they're passionate about as parents, we're not as comfortable with. Consequently, we keep going back to what we like to do and what we're comfortable with. But let's step out of the box and out of our comfort zone and try to let them follow that passion. I also believe a competitive nature comes into play, and these kids that have that innate desire to win, you cannot offer enough in that area that they're passionate about. It doesn't have to be, could be basketball, football, stock shows. It doesn't matter what it is. If they have that competitive drive and obviously are passionate about it, you just keep feeding them information and giving them more practice and whatever you can, and they're going to thrive. I'm not sure we can instill this competitive nature, but rather it lies deep in the DNA. This is also not always a positive quality. I have a youngest daughter. Sometimes, and I consider myself competitive.
Fake news.
No. Occasionally it gets us in trouble. Our youngest daughter takes it to the extreme that maybe not today as she enters her teenage years, but up until now, we would get out of the car or the SUV at a parking lot at Walmart, and she would walk just enough faster than her siblings and myself to make sure she's the first one at the door every time.
What's wrong with that?
She's got that competitive nature. I did not teach it to her. She was definitely born with that one. But I think
my mother always said I was the first one to finish dinner because I wanted to be first. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that.
And that's probably true, wasn't it?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't consciously make the decision to finish first. I just had other things I needed to do.
Well, Lisa, that was a good question. I think a good topic area that Ryan really hit as well as any that he's ever addressed. And I appreciate you breaking it apart like that, Ryan. And I think it's something that parents and people that are working with these stock show kids, there's definitely differences out there, and we need to accept it. Maybe some of them only want to show at a recreational level. I know that you don't like that term, Ryan, but some of them just aren't going to grab a hold of it and maybe go as hard as what we would like them to.
I see that, but I think one of the things that makes junior livestock shows the best place to raise your kid is because you are going to have those ones that are ultra competitive. There are families and there are kids that like to show stock because they like the environment, they like the people, they like to go to the places, see the shows, even though they may not be there to win or get a brand or make the sale. Now, I don't understand that, but I have accepted it. And the best part is, it doesn't matter what level you're competing at or what your motivation to participate in this industry is, the benefits that it teaches the children in terms of dedication, determination, goal setting, all of these things that are going to make them so much better equipped in the game of life when they find what they're passionate about. Those happen at every level in the junior stock show world. And that is the difference in our industry and all others.
Amen, my gay friend. That is exactly right. I love it. Tiffany presents a question to us. How to get kids interested in cattle at the county level to ensure increasing numbers. I'm going to twist this a little bit, and let's just talk about numbers of livestock across species at the county level. And I know, Ryan, you're passionate about this one, so jump in.
Well, let me tell you something. County fairs are pretty much Satan's work in a lot of ways. And that is why, and I can say this because now more than ever, not only do I communicate with more show families through social media and all this stuff, and in-person communication, going to these shows, more people are specifically not participating in their county fair because of the bullshit that happens at a county fair. And y'all may not like that out there, but it's the truth. It is harder to win your county fair sometimes than it is a major stock show because of all of the stuff that happens. And one thing that I would suggest to anybody, and I think most of the people that run county fairs are good people that try hard, but we all know there is always a bad apple in every cart, just like the man that killed George Floyd, okay? It happens. The one thing that I would suggest to anybody that's trying to increase participation in county fair is find a judge that is completely removed from, as far removed as possible from anybody in that county. Because the politics and the stupid nonsense happen at the county fair level more than anywhere else. Because two things happen. Somebody gets somebody in there that's their buddy, or they don't think that they can afford a judge that is a state away or far enough removed away, so they get somebody 2 counties over, etc. And that's where it starts. Right there. Get somebody that is knowledgeable, respected, that is as far removed as you can. And there are people like me. There are more than just me that will do this. Will go to those county fairs and do it and do a good job, but you got to ask them. And so many times I hear this over and over again. I can't believe you judge county fairs. Why would somebody like you judge a county fair? Why would you not judge a county fair? That's always my response. Why would I not? I believe more than anyone, the reason that it is so important for me to judge county fairs is to stop what happens at so many of them. Go there, do the best job you can, do it correctly. Don't let anybody influence you, because that will get the participation back. Because I have seen more stuff happen that was wrong at a county fair level than anywhere else. And that's why I go to every single one that I can, so it won't happen that day. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now.
That was really good. I hate to agree with you on too many topics, but it was so well spoken, Ryan, and explained. And it's frustrating to the point that we've, as a family, somewhat removed ourselves from our county fair. And maybe that's a bad thing. And part of it is that our kids get to travel around the country and they get to show it at a lot of different shows. And if we go into the county fair and do extremely well each year, then it's taking that chance away from somebody else. But part of it is the frustration of just what you talked about. And I can tell you those superintendents, committee leaders, those that are hiring judges for the different species at the county fairs, you cannot afford to not get a judge from further away. I don't care what it costs you. And I know sometimes we're working with limited budgets, but you have to try. And I understand that maybe you're the superintendent of the hog show at such and such county. Maybe you don't feel comfortable calling Ryan or somebody else. Ask somebody for assistance. Gather as much information as you can, because there are some things, and it seems like somehow there's at least one bad apple at every county show, and I'm not sure how that happens. But there are more injustices done at some of these counties than we see at the major livestock shows.
That's just the truth.
It is what it is.
Plain, simple truth.
And I think Ryan's comments, bring a judge in there. Ryan, I believe, judged 3 county shows in Indiana the past few days. And I'm going to venture to guess he did not know a single individual at any of those 3. And if he did, there wasn't very many.
The only one I did know some people at the Tippecanoe County Fair, because I had judged it the year before. When I mean I know people, like I recognize those kids, stuff like that. I promise you there are people out there that care as much about this as I do. I'm not the only one that will do everything in their power to get there and be there. What's the worst thing that happens? You call somebody up, they tell you no. Okay, you tried. Just like at one of these counties that I was at this past week, a guy came up to me that was from another county and says, I have a question. He says, I don't understand how they can afford to have you here at this show. And he says, because I'm sure your fee is just astronomical. I said, no, sir. No, it's not. I said, I literally, when a show calls me, I figure out what my expenses are. I send them that number and I tell them whatever they want to pay me on top of that is up to them. And I know everybody can't do that. Is not in a situation that they can. But there are more people out there than you will think that will try and make it work. And this astronomical judging fee that everybody thinks everybody charges, I know there are some people that do that, but I know a lot more that don't.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of shows out there that you'd be surprised how the budgets are working off of, but try to work with the people like Ryan. And I'm happy to jump in there as well and have done many, many county shows, but you've got to try. And if they say no, you call another one. But I think if you could bring somebody in that's qualified and doesn't know the kids in that county, come in and sort those as honestly as possible, I think a lot of these county fair issues that we deal with will be gone. That's simple. I'm not saying it's going to fix everything, but that's the single biggest thing that I could recommend to those of you that are at the county fair level, hiring judges, trying to make those county shows better. Bring in a judge that can be as non-political as possible and qualified.
Amen.
The next question comes from Brooklyn. Moving forward with state fairs versus expos that maybe have popped up as replacements shows to state fairs, what do you see happening next year and beyond?
Well, I think it's going to be real interesting because all of these, new expos and replacements for the state fairs, they're all fixing to try to go down. And again, with Rona spiking and all this other stuff, it's making it increasingly hard. I want them all to go off. I hope they all do get to have their show. I think next summer, and I've said this a lot, I think next summer, I think all the state fairs will be back because by next summer, the election will be over. There will have to be at least a vaccine on the market or a therapeutic. And so that will be under control. And I think the state fairs will return for the most part. I hope that these expos and these replacement shows for the state fairs, if they are run well and do everything that they have promised for these exhibitors and these families and come through, I hope they stay. Because again, the more choices you have and the more places you can go, it's better for everybody. I'm not saying that now we're going to have to put on more animals on feed to go to both. But if you have in your state a state fair and a youth expo that are both around the same time, say you only have one steer, lamb, goat, pig on feed, they're going to be different judges. You can pick the judge that you think your animal's suited better to, or you can pick the one that you think you'll have more fun at. And so I hope all these are wildly successful, and I hope they stick around. And I also hope the state fairs come back.
It would be great to have that choice, wouldn't it? I love the tradition and the history of the state fairs. Do I always agree with how each state fair in each barn is run? Probably not. And I think that's pretty universal. But at the same time, if we have choices and we have expos to go to, I'd like to go to all of them. But kind of like we talked about before, as more competition comes in, I bet it steps up the shows that have traditionally been there, and the game is jumped up a couple levels, and we have to serve that customer just a little bit better. And I think it makes it more enjoyable for everybody. So I'm excited about it. I hope the replacement shows are there. I'm confident that state fairs will be back next year. My theory on Texas and Oklahoma numbers and California numbers spiking now, that when we hit 2021, we're darn sure going to be in a lot better shape in terms of stock shows happening normal, and a vaccine hopes of being out in November, if not then by the first of the year. We're not that far from normality. We just got to hang in there and continue to get these kids in the ring between now and then as best we can. But I think this whole COVID-19 thing could work to our advantage looking down the road 2, 3, 4 years, because I think we'll have more shows.
No, that's the hope. And like I said, I want them all to go off, and I want them all to be successful. I want all those people to come through. And because, again, I'm not saying that we have to put more animals on feed. Of course, that would be ideal if you can and you can afford it, because if you had options. But even if you just still feed what you normally do and you had a choice on where you could go and you thought you could be the most successful, I think it just helps everybody. It's a win-win.
It's huge. It's exciting. It's huge. We're just now getting into state fair season here in the Midwest, and we've got some of the state fairs trying to happen and some of the state fair replacement shows that are scheduled, and we're coming into the fall. We're going to have some disappointments. We're going to have some of the state fairs that canceled, maybe a replacement show that can't seem to get it to pull off because of a health department or some type of regulation out of their control. We're going to go to the fall with some questions. Again, I hope we don't cancel prematurely. I think we have done a great job of stepping up and providing shows for these youth to go to. And I think we need to continue to do this through the fall. And thank God when 2021 comes around, it's going to be a little bit more normal. I've enjoyed today's discussion, and we may attempt to bring in listener topics once per month. Let us know on social media if you like what we did today. We'll try to incorporate that in. Until next week, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?